There is a moment when even the sense of being unburdened fades, not because a burden returns, but because the contrast itself disappears. Earlier, it felt meaningful to notice that nothing was being carried. Now even that recognition no longer presents itself. Life does not announce its lightness. It simply functions. At this depth, there is no longer an internal reference point checking how things are going. There is no subtle monitoring of ease or tension. Ease is no longer something felt. Tension is no longer something resisted. Both are seen as movements within life, not indicators of a personal state. What quietly dissolves here is the habit of self-location. Earlier, there was still a subtle sense of here I am, living this. Now even that orientation softens. Experience continues, but it does not orbit around a center. Sounds arise without being received. Sensations move without being owned. Thoughts appear without a thinker standing behind them. This does not feel like absence. It feels like intimacy without position. Everything is close because nothing is being held at a distance. There is no watcher behind the eyes. Seeing happens. There is no listener inside the head. Hearing happens. There is no one inside the body directing movement. Movement happens. This is where the word I loses its weight. It may still be used in language for convenience, but it no longer refers to an inner entity. It no longer points to a psychological center. It is just a sound used in communication, not a location. Life begins to feel self-moving, not in a mystical sense, but in a very ordinary, undeniable way. Breathing does not need permission. The heart does not wait for instruction. Responses arise before thought claims credit for them. Thought follows behind, narrating what has already happened. Earlier, there was an interest in alignment, living in harmony with truth. Now that interest feels unnecessary. Life does not need to be aligned with itself. Any attempt to align would imply separation. That implication has fallen away. This is why even spiritual effort feels strange here. Effort implies direction. Direction implies distance. Distance implies a goal somewhere else. None of that applies. There is no elsewhere to move toward. What remains is not static, but it is not moving toward anything. Daily life continues in a very human way. You still wake up. You still interact. You still handle responsibilities. But the inner commentary that once accompanied these activities has largely fallen silent. Not through discipline, but through irrelevance. Commentary no longer serves a function. When challenges arise, they are met directly. There is no inner debate about whether you are responding from truth or from ego. Those categories no longer make sense. Response happens or it doesn't. If correction is needed, it occurs. If rest is needed, rest happens. There is no self-assessment layered on top. This is also where identity stories lose their grip. The past no longer defines who you are. It is remembered when useful and forgotten when not. Memory functions without becoming narrative. There is no emotional investment in continuity. The future also loses its emotional pull. Planning may happen, but anticipation does not carry anxiety. Hope does not lean forward. Fear does not project. The future is no longer imagined as a place where fulfillment or failure awaits. It is simply another concept arising now. At this depth, trust is not a belief. It is the absence of opposition. You are no longer positioned against life, so there is nothing to trust or distrust. Life unfolds, and you are not separate from that unfolding. This does not mean life always feels pleasant. Discomfort can arise. Pain can arise. Loss can arise. But none of these crystallize into suffering. Suffering requires resistance and ownership. Without ownership, pain remains sensation, not identity. Even emotional waves pass through cleanly. Sadness may come and go without turning into a personal story. Anger may arise and resolve without justification. Joy may appear without attachment. Emotions are experienced fully, but they do not linger. At this depth, compassion is no longer something you try to embody. It arises naturally from clarity. You see others as movements of life responding to conditioning. This does not make you passive. It makes you precise. Boundaries arise when needed, without hostility. There is also no longer a need to be understood. Earlier, there may have been a desire for others to see what you see or recognize where you are. That desire has faded. Understanding belongs to identity. Without identity, there is nothing to explain. Teaching, if it happens, happens quietly. Words come when needed and stop when they are not. There is no urgency, no sense of mission, no pressure to transmit something important. Truth does not depend on expression. This is where humility is complete, but not cultivated. There is no sense of being advanced or evolved. Those ideas require comparison. Comparison has no footing here. There is no scale to measure against. Even the idea of awakening now feels like a memory. Something that once mattered, once organized experience, once gave meaning. Now it feels like scaffolding that has been removed. Useful at the time, unnecessary now. This is not a withdrawal from life. It is full participation without self-reference. You are engaged, responsive, available, but not entangled. You care deeply, but nothing is personal. You act decisively, but nothing is defended. This is where the sense of authorship dissolves. Actions happen, but there is no sense of I did this. Speech happens, but there is no sense of I chose these words. Everything feels spontaneous, but not chaotic. Ordered, but not controlled. Life feels intelligent here, not because you believe it is, but because you see it functioning without interference. Intelligence is not something added. It is revealed when control drops. This is also where fear of death loses its emotional charge. Death is no longer imagined as something that happens to me. It is seen as another movement within life. There is no fascination and no avoidance. The question simply loses importance. What remains is not a conclusion. It does not feel like an ending. It feels like openness without direction. Life continues to surprise, to change, to move. But none of it is framed as progress or decline. This is why nothing needs to be protected here. There is no realization to maintain, no clarity to guard, no depth to preserve. What remains cannot be lost because it was never gained. At this depth, gratitude is quiet and objectless. Not gratitude for something, but a gentle appreciation that nothing is wrong at the level of being. Even when circumstances are difficult, there is no sense of existential problem. Life becomes very simple, but not small. Simple because there is no inner complication. Vast because nothing is excluded. There is no longer a sense of my experience. There is simply experience. There is no longer a sense of my awareness. There is simply what is happening. Even the phrase I am now feels like too much. Not wrong, just unnecessary. Being does not need to name itself. Existence does not need a label. Life is living itself. Seeing is seeing itself. Knowing is knowing itself. No one is behind it. No one is ahead of it. No one is managing it. And there is a deep, quiet certainty that this has always been the case. Nothing has been reached. Nothing has been achieved. Nothing has been completed. Only the habit of standing apart has ended. And life continues, freely, effortlessly, without a center.